Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Impact Discipleship. We are back here on a Saturday morning, and I'm doing the introduction because it's pretty low energy here. You're going to get some fake cheers in the background, but hey, we are going to continue our series in Proverbs. Today, we are going to handle Proverbs chapter 12, as some of you already know. This entire area of Proverbs, all the way from chapters 10 all the way through chapter 29, 20 straight chapters, is a list of wise sayings. So I'm calling this series, this very lengthy series, Ancient Words of Wisdom. So today, and as we've been doing, I'll read the proverb, and then I'm going to give you a key word, the thing I think that kind of came out in my attention when I was studying about what this means, and then I'll give you a kind of modern, practical explanation of that verse, and we'll move on. And I'm excited. I don't know if I mentioned this before. Since we started this series, I decided to break each section of these Proverbs, 5 chapters at a time, and turn them into a book on ancient words of wisdom. So that's going to be forthcoming in the coming months as well. We'll print a series of those into next year. So, verse 1. Again, this is chapter 12. Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. I love that. Talk about being bold. And the key word here for me is receptivity. A man who is willing to be taught is a man who is willing to continue to increase his bank of knowledge over his entire lifetime. The man who is always right in his own mind and who believes that he already knows everything has no room for growth and improvement. So somebody who's receptive is willing to hear something they don't know and grow from it, maybe even change because of it. Verse 2. A good man obtains favor from the Lord, but a man of wicked intentions he will condemn. God will condemn. I use the word intentions here for the key word. God knows the heart, and it is an exercise in futility to believe things can be concealed from him. A man will be either rewarded or punished by God for what he has conceived in the depths of his soul. And of course, the soul is the mind, the will, the emotions, the intentions, the inspirations. God condemns them when they're wicked, no doubt. Verse 3. A man is not established by wickedness. I love that word established. Kind of, you could feel that feeling of planted, firmly planted, established. But the root of righteousness cannot be moved. I just took that word root and used it here for the key word, roots. If all a man stands for is empty and shallow, he is easily tossed to and fro by every wind of change or challenge. His reputation is that of a fragile man who is inconsistent and undependable. Right? You can picture that. Somebody who just could be moved by the moment, moved by the wind. A man firmly planted in what he believes and for what he represents is a man who can be trusted in all seasons and under every condition. His reputation is that of a man of integrity who is steadfast and unwavering. That's why I called it roots. Can you picture that in the plant world, right? Something that has deep roots stays firmly planted even when there's external forces. We live here in Florida. We know that with hurricanes. Trees that have shallow roots, generally the ones that tip over during hurricane season. Number 12, number 4, verse 4. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who causes shame is like rottenness to his bones. Wow. The crown on her husband. The word that came to mind when I was thinking of that is the word representation. A wife is both a reflection of her husband and his most important emissary. By how she represents him, she will either be an asset to him and cause him to be honored and well respected, or she will be a liability to him and cause him to be inconsequential and unimportant. You know, that whole picture of the wife representing her husband and being a crown, this is the same picture of disciples. We are ambassadors. We go forward And just like a queen or a princess would go forward from the kingdom of what she represents, and maybe she goes as an emissary or representative to another kingdom, she what comes with her is the authority of the king from where she came. And it's the same thing with us as disciples of Christ. We walk as emissaries, ambassadors of Christ, so we carry his authority everywhere we go. You can almost even picture it being as if every step you take, the land you're standing on in that moment is like an embassy. It's a place where you established his authority, and it now becomes the land, God's land in a foreign land. By the way, that's why we called Kingdom Embassy Ministries not a church, so to speak, but an embassy. It's a place where we plant God's authority. Verse 5, the thoughts of the righteous are right. That sounds right. But the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. And if I remind you, when we've gone through the first few chapters of this, I don't want to hyper-emphasize the words that keep coming up, like righteous and wicked. Right? We could redefine it. It's really the context they're being used for in the verse that I want to accentuate here. And here, the key word that came up in my mind was advice. It is critical that a man is willing to take advice from others, but it is even more critical that he knows the character of the one from whom he is being advised. The man who makes what God thinks his top priority will give godly counsel. The man who is motivated by his own fleshly desires will offer shortcuts and will let expedience guide his advice. So you not only have to be willing to take advice, right? You have to be willing to know, or you have to be savvy enough to know from whom you're taking advice. Right? You can't just take advice from anyone. Verse 6, the words of the wicked are, lie in wait for blood. That's an interesting way of wording this. But the mouth of the upright will deliver him. The words of the wicked are lie and wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright will deliver him. And the key word I extracted from this is the word protection. If a man has darkness in his heart, he will have no concerns for the consequences of his words. He is not surprised when they cause irreparable damage. A man filled with light imparts God's grace, and his top priority is the well-being of others. His words are guided by his first order of business: do no harm. Protection. Verse 7, the wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. And you can see, here's the contrast is now the picture is a building. The picture is a structure. And the key word I got from verse 7 in my mind was the word resilience. It can be difficult to stand by and watch evil flourish and prosper, but fear not, it is guaranteed that all that it has accomplished will crumble in the end. All that God sees as good will prosper in the end, and all the man of God must do is patiently endure the storm, as his victory is as sure as the wicked man's defeat. Verse 8, a man will be commended according to his wisdom, but he who is of a perverse heart will be despised. A perverse heart. The word I wrote here is the word accommodations. God is just, and what that means is that a man will ultimately be recognized for his true nature. The wise man will be loved and honored and eventually rewarded for his reputation, and the man with twisted morals will eventually be exposed and ultimately rejected and put to shame. You know, like when you make accommodations for somebody or you have accommodations, you're actually recognizing them. That's the thing. It's like a commendation. It's a recognition, and people will ultimately recognize for who they really are. Verse 9. Better is the one who is slighted and has a servant than he who honors himself but lacks bread. That's an interesting concept, right? It's almost amusing. What does that mean? The key word that came to my mind here is the word pretense. Pretense is a way of acting. It's like you're acting in a fake way, like you're not really authentic. If a man is certain of his identity in the Lord, then he is unwavering even when he feels cheated. He knows that his value is not attached to what others think, and therefore he can withstand and even prosper through those difficult moments when he is not treated fairly. But a man who hijacks praise and falsely claims honors for which he is undeserving will not only appear to be benefiting from his pretense, those benefits are temporary and quickly fade into poverty and emptiness. Right? In the end, what it's saying is the truth is always exposed. Somebody who's living, and you've seen this, right? People who are faking who they are, they might seem, and sometimes for years, seem to be thriving and pulling the wool over people's eyes, but in the end, they're exposed. And we see this all the time. And basically it adds confusion sometimes. You say, how could that person have been that way for so long? And yet, this is who they really are. It's because of this. Okay, verse 10. A righteous man regards the life of his animal, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. You see, there's that word righteous again, but here it's regarding a specific thing. In this case, it's the life of his animal, the life of his probably in those days a beast of burden, an animal that was serving him in some way. And the word here, the key word for me here is the word humane. Man was given dominion over all of creation, the earth and all that's in it, including the animals. A good man will treat them all with utter compassion, regardless of what they are being used for, including animals utilized for work or food. A man who has no regard for life will dismiss the importance of God's creatures and will abuse them. Verse 11, he who tills his land will be satisfied with bread, but he who follows frivolity is devoid of understanding. Frivolity. That's the word they're describing what's frivolous, like meaningless, almost fake, like a joke, not to be taken seriously, right? I use the word here, for you young people, I use the word here, adulting. Plan ahead and work that plan, and the ultimate reward is both satisfying and fruitful. Treat all of life like a game that is nothing to take serious, and a man will receive a fool's reward. Verse 12. The wicked covet the catch of the evil men, but the root of the righteous yields fruit. And this one, I remember writing this, because I wrote this a few weeks ago. I remember writing this and really struggling with trying to understand the depth. What does that mean, the wicked? Because you're seeing two wicked people here. You have the wicked who are coveting, and what they're coveting is coming from other evil people, right? The wicked covet the catch of evil men, meaning you look on and you see an evil man prosper, and you like it. That makes you wicked, in a sense, right? But here, the word that came to me here is the word piracy. There are men who work hard and who benefit from that hard work. And there are evil men who would rather do no hard work and simply wait for the opportune time to swoop in and snatch the proceeds of the man who earned it. They revel in taking what they don't deserve, stealing the benefits of someone else's work. And then there is even a more disgusting level of darkness than even the evil man who swoops in. For at least he has taken some action. It's the man who covets the fruit of that evil thief while he himself sits motionless. That's a level of darkness. An evil man is one thing, coming in to steal things from others. But you do nothing. You don't even take the action to steal. You just covet what the stolen goods are from another evil man.
Coveting and sloth.
Wow. Yes, exactly. All right, verse 13. The wicked is ensnared by the transgressions of his lips, but the righteous will come through trouble. The word here I got is liable. If a man has no discretion for what he is willing to let slip from his mouth, he is guaranteed to be trapped by his own words and forced to make good on promises he never intended to make in the first place. By the way, we call those yes people. Very dangerous. A man who carefully measures his words never gets stuck doing what is against his integrity. He is never forced to perform something he sloppily promised in an overabundance of meaningless words. Wow, that's a good one. Basically, talk less, you won't get yourself in so much trouble. Right? Okay, verse 14, sorry. 12:14. A man will be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands will be rendered to him. Recompense, meaning, you know what that means? Recompense means what you get paid for something. It's what you get rewarded for. Like somebody gave you something for what you did. Recompense. I use the word here, keyword, compensation. A man will be compensated for both what he says and what he does. If what he says imparts life and what he does brings value, he will be duly rewarded with great blessings. Saying and doing. Verse 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. I use the key word here, choices. A fool is convinced that he already knows everything and that his own opinion is superior every time. A wise man considers the opinions of others, especially if those giving advice are reputable and experienced. We talked about that a little earlier in the previous proverb, that you have to not only be willing to take advice, but you have to be willing to evaluate the person from whom you're taking advice, right? In this case, it's saying it's a good idea if that person has a good reputation or is experienced in the field you're taking advice about, right? Does that make sense? Okay, verse 16. A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame. I love that. A prudent man covers shame. You know, there's a lot of attributes we could say of somebody that's being prudent, right? There's lots of things we could say. A prudent man does things. It's a good quality to be prudent. But in this case, it's specifying a thing that the prudent man does. In this case, covers shame. And I use the word, which stems from that, graciousness. There is nothing gracious about a foolish man. He is impetuous and will let his emotions and reflexes rule his reactions. All standing by will know immediately what he thinks at every moment, and he cares not that he makes things worse. A man who is judicious and measured withholds judgment until he has gained all the facts, and even then he reacts with compassion and empathy. His response is tempered with hope and resolution and restoration. No, hope for resolution and restoration. Not in such a way that makes things worse or makes things more difficult for the offender to reverse course. Do you get that? Get what it's like? Graciousness is this. You've made an error. I'm pointing out your error. But I'm pointing out your error in such a way that you feel comfortable correcting your error and not feeling condemned that you made that error and willing to admit that error, because I'm making space for you to not feel judged and condemned over what you did. Right? You get that feeling? That's graciousness. A prudent man covers shame, meaning I'm not going to go out there and quickly try to expose your mistake to make you look bad. I'm going to correct you and give you time to correct yourself without feeling condemned. Very powerful. Very Christian thing to do. Okay, we're up to now 12:17. He who speaks truth declares righteousness, but a false witness deceit. Okay, if you speak truth, there's that word again, righteousness, but a false witness deceit. What is a false witness declaring? Lies. I use the word here, honesty. This is one of the shortest comments of the entire section. Basically one sentence. Truth is always what is right in God's eyes, as anything other than truth is only meant for one thing: to manipulate others. Truth is always what's right in God's eyes, as anything other than truth is meant for only one thing: to manipulate others. And of course, this has to do with intention, right? It's not, you could be mistaken and not know the truth. But by the virtue of the fact that you're mistaken means you're not doing it on purpose to manipulate others, right? This is somebody who knows that what they're doing is not true. Like a false witness. False witnesses, you think they're lying by mistake about what they're testifying? No, a false witness is by definition somebody who knows they're telling a lie, right? It's not just an error. Okay, verse 18. There is one who speaks like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health. A lot on the tongue here, right? I wrote a phrase here for the key phrase. In this case, 2 words. Words matter. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. You can either drive a sword into the heart of a person with your words, or you can impart God's grace. That's as wide a chasm as you can get. Murder somebody with your words, or impart the power of God to them with your words. Wow. Verse 19. The truthful lip shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. I love this concept. This might be one of the most important ones for your practical everyday living. This book that I'm going to extract and make out of this, the reason why I'm doing it is because I think these are good practical tools. Like what can you use this for? How can this guide you in your everyday life? Well, truth is important. So key word I wrote here, because of that, you see that phrase, established forever? I used the word immutable. One of the most difficult aspects of telling lies is that a man who lies must always remember what he said at a particular time to a specific person. Why? Because what he asserts to be true can change at any moment. Right? So if you're a liar, you better remember what you said, because you don't have the truth to fall back on, and you might be telling different stories to different people. No such difficulty exists for those who tell the truth, as the truth never changes. Right? Does that make sense? Like, when you lie, you better remember what you said. Verse 20. Deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but counselors of peace have joy. I just use the word peace as a key word here. When a man knows that he is being dishonest, when all his intentions are deceptive and self-motivated, he is always on edge. He can never relax and take it easy, because he knows it is inevitable that he will be exposed. He just does not know when. Can you imagine that? Like, if you're living a life of pretense and lies, your underlying way of being is always anxious that somebody's going to figure out what you really are. A man who provides good counsel, whose advice is always motivated by what is noble and good and just and right, sleeps at night with utter contentment. He knows that what he has offered others was 100% inspired in their best interest and not his own. What a way to live. Verse 21. No grave trouble will overtake the righteous, but the wicked shall be filled with evil. And the key word I wrote here is outcomes. The outcome is inevitable. Wicked men invite and produce evil results. Those who stand firm in the things of God are ultimately shielded from the effects of wicked intentions. Verse 22, we're getting there. Lying lips are here we are talking about false telling lies again. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are his delight. And I use a key word here called opposites. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. We said that earlier in this proverb. A mouth filled with lies is an abomination and is intent on murder, whereas truth brings God pleasure because it nurtures life. Abomination is used to describe the most egregious of offenses against God. Lying lips are an abomination. Abomination, one of the most labels of one of the most offensive things, the most egregious things against God. Verse 23, here's that prudent man again, right? Before we said the prudent man covers things, like he doesn't bring shame, right? We said that some handful of verses back. In verse 23 it says, a prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims foolishness. And I wrote the key word here as discretion. At times, it is judicious for a man to keep what he knows to himself, rather than sloppily spewing it out of his mouth at the wrong time and the risk of coming across like a know-it-all. There is a proper time for a man to reveal things or to show how much he knows. Otherwise, doing so at an inopportune time makes him look like a fool, rather than the one who brings truth to the table. Discretion. Know when to say what you're saying and when not to say it. Verse 24. The hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy man will be put to forced labor. Now the difference, you can see that contrast, how wide that is. Somebody ruling and forced labor. Can you even get the picture of some kind of like rock quarry with the person directing all the hard laborers and the person doing the labor, right? So I use the key word here, position. A man who works hard and consistently gets the job done will build a reputation of dependability. He will quickly advance up the ranks into a leadership role as his value is easily spotted by those in charge. A man who barely does the minimum to stay employed will at best remain in the same position indefinitely, if not being demoted or fired altogether. Can you see the difference between that position? A ruling person and a laborer. It's really about what you're going to put into it, right? You're going to get the job done. You're going to be dependable. Can you be trusted? You'll advance. Verse 25. Anxiety in the heart of a man causes depression. We had a conversation this morning before we were on camera here, talking about anxiety. Anxiety in the heart of a man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad. I wrote the word affirmation. We talked about this too this morning, which was, about pouring out life-giving words on other people. You can bless somebody with kind words indefinitely and never run out. So the key word, affirmation. Unproductive, unedifying self-talk can paralyze a man, ultimately rendering him ineffective at most everything for which he is responsible. This can be a very depressing way to exist. Healthy self-talk, that is affirmative, nourishes the heart of a man and makes him totally effective in all his endeavors. All right, guys, we're already up to verse 26. The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray. I use the key word here, influence. A man is the sum of those with whom he spends the most amount of time. Even though he intends to be a good influence, what is most often the outcome is that he is poorly influenced by others. Bad company corrupts good morals. A man of wisdom hand selects his closest friends, allies, and he carefully vets with whom he spends time and thereby whom he is influenced. Okay, number 27, verse 27. A lazy man does not roast what he took in hunting. This is such a great visual. But diligence is a man's precious possession. So he's using a specific activity. Hey, I'm a hunter. I caught something, and then you do what? Let it rot in the field? Don't take it home for food? Don't cook it? Don't utilize it? Right? He's contrasting that single bad decision with this concept of diligence, which I extrapolated to mean stewardship. If a man has expended the effort to obtain any of his assets, why would he not protect those assets? The answer is simple: laziness. That is why what a man should first seek as one of his assets is diligence. Once he has obtained diligence, all other assets increase in value exponentially. Wow. That's deep. I wonder who wrote that. This is what, let's read it again. That's a good one. I did this weeks ago, so some of it is surprising. That is why what a man should first seek as one of his assets is diligence. Once he has obtained diligence, all other assets increase in value exponentially. Why? Because he's going to be a good steward of what he has. And when you're a good steward, very often your assets grow. Right? Make sense? Wow, look at this. We are come to the end already. Wow, how's that possible? Already done. Verse 28. In the way of righteousness is life, and in its path there is no death. I just called this one life. It's a simple equation. God's ways leads to life, and going against his ways leads to death. God's way is life, against God's way, death. You can't possess both simultaneously. That's why in Deuteronomy it says, I lay before you life and death, blessings and cursings. Therefore choose life that you may live. That's the point. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion of chapter 12. It's a shorter section. There were 28 verses in total, and you could see all those key phrases. If you're watching this online, of course, you could download the notes if you want a set of it, and keep your eyes out for a book on this coming soon, Ancient Words of Wisdom. Amen. We'll see you guys next time.